On this episode of Big Sky Now, the panel is all back together and we discuss our 2026 season preview of the Big Sky Conference. We give our preseason MVP picks, our champion of the year, and dive into each team to talk about what to expect this upcoming season. Before we start, I'd like to give a special thank you to MNC Tires for sponsoring this podcast. Let's not waste any time and get right to it. Welcome back, everyone, to the Big Sky Now podcast. I am your host, Luke Schmit, and I am very thrilled to be back for the 2026-2027 season. Along as my panel, I will introduce them in a second. I just wanted to say how excited I am and appreciate everyone tuning into our podcast. We were able to go to Spokane a few weeks ago and catch up with a few players on a couple different teams, and that was just eye-opening for me, so just wanted to thank everyone for tuning into that also. But without further ado, let me introduce my panel. First, from the Daily Interlake sports editor, I have Fritz Neighbor. Then I have Daily Interlake sports reporter Jon Allen. And next, Columbia Basin Herald sports reporter Mike Maynard. And last but not least, we have Mark Nelke from the Coeur d'Alene Press. Guys, I just want to thank you all for being on time today. That's what we were talking right before. We're ready to go. Everyone's jumping at the bit to talk football. Fritz, I'm going to talk to you, first. Tell me how your summer's been and maybe what you've been up to. And then if you want to talk about maybe something you're excited about this season for football.
Until recently, I was just breathing a lot of smoke for the last 3 weeks, and then we finally got some rain. And I think we all try to get our PTO in during the summer because once September comes around, it's all over. We don't have much time to take off. So I can't say it's been real productive. Until we got to Spokane anyway.
That's right. Spokane at least saved a little bit of the smoke. We were having some fun there for sure. I'm going to go to Jon next. Jon has had last year was pretty perfect for him football wise, but I'll let him talk. Jon, talk to us what you've been up to, and what do you think about this Big Sky football season?
Yeah, I've like you kind of mentioned last year with the podcast, getting the picks championship. Can't say that I'll do that again this year, but gonna have to try. But personal fandom as well, with Seattle Seahawks winning the Super Bowl. It was a great season. So I've been riding that high throughout the summer, but I'm excited for a new year, get to talk some Big Sky football with you guys again. And just I'm really interested just to see, maybe not inside the Big Sky totally, but just how the FCS looks with North Dakota State gone. I think that's my biggest thing that I want to look into this year.
Exactly, making that jump up to FBS, as well as last year's Big Sky team, Sacramento State, also making that jump. And don't want to sell Jon too short. He also won our fantasy football league as well. So he had quite the fall last year. Jon, I have one more question for you. Have you been watching Hard Knocks? And if so, have you seen Patrick O'Connell? He's been getting featured on there quite a bit.
I have not been watching Hard Knocks. I'm honestly have not really been into the show too much. With it being Seattle, I do kind of want to check it out.
Yeah, well, I'll definitely encourage you to check it out. There, Cooper Kupp's on there, of course, receiver, and there's a lot of Big Sky players on there. There's a clip of Marshawn Lynch and Ty Okada talking on the sideline of a practice. There's some cool Big Sky clips in there. If anyone's interested, I would very recommend the HBO Hard Knocks. But enough about that. Let's get out to Mark Nelke here. Mark, how have you been this summer? And just tell us, football season's got to be the best time of the year, right?
Yeah, well, first to speak to John's Seahawks, I'm a 49ers fan, so it wasn't quite the same postseason as Jon enjoyed. So suffice it is to say is I have not watched Hard Knocks and won't watch Hard Knocks this year. So, but as far as the Big Sky goes, the one thing I was thinking about early, it'll be curious to see whether all these teams or whoever, or most of them, that play their first game is a conference game, to see how big a deal that turns out to be at the end. I know they have 7 more after that, after a few weeks, but it'll just be kind of curious, because usually a first game is when a lot of crazy things happen and upsets happen, and you wonder if something that happens in the first game is going to have an impact on the final standings and postseason and stuff like that.
Yeah, and there's some good matchups week 1 that we get to talk about next week on the podcast. Very excited to dive into those games because usually we're not talking Big Sky football for 4 or 5 weeks, maybe even 2 months. But we have the pleasure now of week 1 being the official Big Sky game for the schedule right now. Last but not least, Mike Maynard here. Mike, saw you, met you in Spokane. Was really great to do that. Really glad you're back this year. How's your summer been? And as the new guy of Big Sky, what are you excited for this year?
Yeah, I summer was kind of slow, but with all the high school sports slowing down, you kind of get more time to get creative and pursue some unique stories that you don't always get to. So a lot of summer ball and catching up with players that are in college and whatnot. Just wrote a story on a softball player from Idaho State, Fritz's Bengals. So that was a fun time writing that story. And cousin got married, so got to go back to Ohio and go have fun at a wedding. Other than that, ever since I've gotten back from that wedding trip, I've been itching for football. So that Big Sky Conference Media Weekend was a lot of fun, getting to kind of see all the big players and coaches in the Big Sky Conference that make a big difference and are going to be making a lot of noise this year, I imagine. Learned a lot. So I'm looking forward to seeing, if Montana State can run it back, repeat as national champions. Yeah, I'm excited to see, who rises to the occasion. We got 2 new additions to the conference, see how they fare. Cause I think, it was a Utah Tech that played a lot of our teams last year and gave a lot of them a run for their money. So I'm excited to see how they actually fare officially in the conference.
And 3 new coaches as well, with Montana, Bobby Kennedy taking over. And then we also have new coaches at Weber State and Portland State. So lots new around the conference. We're going to dive into it all with our team previews coming up here. I'm going to start with John. We're going to go to Montana State. If any of you guys want to jump in, give an opinion, feel free to do so. I'll leave a little bit of space for discussion. But John, I wanted to let you go first. It was your season last year. I know might not be the biggest Bobcat advocate of the world, but I love hearing your take about Montana State. Let's start with the champs. Montana State enters the season with the target on their back this year. Do you think they could even be better? And let's hear what other thoughts you have.
Yeah, well, like I kind of mentioned at the beginning with what I'm looking for with North Dakota State gone, I feel like the target's well and truly on Montana State's back now. They rightfully, in my opinion, were unanimous number 1 and a very big margin over Montana. It's when you just look at their roster, I kind of took a look over it again yesterday, and I'm going to leave out probably way too many players, but there's just so many people back this year from that team last year that rattled off. They started off 0-2 and then rattled off all of the victories to get to the national championship game and pulled out that overtime win over a tough Illinois State team that had proved a lot of doubters wrong. So, but like you look at the offense, you got Justin Lamson, Adam Jones, you got both Dowlers, Caden and Taco back. Rocky Lencioni made some big plays down the stretch. Miles Sandstead in the kicking game's back. Titan Fleischman in the trenches. And I think the biggest addition that they had this year was a transfer, and that's Bruin Fleischman, Titan's brother, who came in from Air Force. And while maybe the stats don't look, great for him if you're just looking at numbers, he had 21 catches, 6 touchdowns, but, they're solid. And then you think Air Force runs a triple option offense, so that those 21 catches were of 95 total completions by the Falcons last year. His 6 touchdowns led the team. So, to kind of show that too, Liam Zarka, the starting quarterback for the Falcons, only threw 120 pass attempts. He ran the ball 190 times. So he definitely was a major player in that Air Force offense. The wins may not have come last year, but I think he's going to be a big addition for this Montana State offense again. And Justin Lamson settled in now for another year. He's got continuity now for a season. I don't see any way that this Montana State team loses on their own. I think that it's going to take some inspired play from other teams this season to, get that target and knock them off their peg.
It's going to be an uphill task for any team in the Big Sky, especially if they're going to Bozeman. That's just going to be an unreal scene this year, especially their first home game. Can't imagine the scenes there. It's going to be quite the entrance for the Bobcats' return after that thrilling national championship game. Like last season, we were talking about, Montana State started 0-2. And for some people that didn't know, they were playing harder schools as they had to go to Oregon and stuff like that. But I really think talking to the guys in the offseason and listening that, that brought them into a realization of what they can do. And this year, I think the sky's the limit for them. Jon, I have one more question for you, and then, anyone else can feel free to give their take about Montana State. If they don't repeat, is there something you could see maybe why, or if there's maybe a weakness on the roster you've seen? I know there's a lot of names and there's a lot of preseason accolades for the team, but maybe there's something that we could maybe pinpoint here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really just looking at it from an outsider's perspective. To me, it just feels like if things get running their way, I don't really see too many weaknesses in general on their team. And that, like I mentioned, it is going to take, an inspired performance from other teams, especially when they go on the road and play in Bozeman. But, this team now has the experience. They have the playoff experience that they, getting the win in the national championship again. And so I just think it'll be a difficult situation for anybody to knock them off.
Yeah, Fritz, do you have anything to add?
Oh, I just don't see a weakness. I have some questions about, Adam Jones can't be a guy. I don't think that will get 20 or 25 carries a game. So they need to figure out who, RB2 is or RB3. And they've got some guys that have really had some big games coming back, besides Jones. I just think it's notable that in years past, they lost a bunch of talent off their O-line and it didn't seem to matter. And they lost only one guy to the portal last year, Cedric Jefferson, since last year. So I just don't see a weakness with that team. I just think that they got through the wars of the postseason and won the big game. They won that game with their two running backs getting 5 carries apiece. I still haven't really made that math work out and how they still won that game. They blocked 2 kicks at the end. That helped. So they've gotten some big game wins that didn't come for them in the past. And I just don't see a weakness. They're going to be very tough to beat.
They're going to be very tough to beat. And I'm right there with you, Fritz and Jon. It's going to take evidence, that we see on Saturdays for us to really change our opinion. You can see how glorified they are in the preseason rankings and accolades, as I already said. So, yeah, we know who the favorite is this year. So let's keep going on to our next team. Fritz, I'll jump it right back at you. I know you've been going to practices in Missoula, and I think there's been a little bit more of coverage on a couple of the coaches and players this year with a new staff, or I should say Bobby Kennedy at the helm. Talk to me what your thoughts are about Grizz training camp so far.
Yeah, I think we're all maybe a little surprised that they're number 2 in the country in those preseason FCS polls. I did rank him. I did vote him number 2 behind MSU in the Big Sky media poll, and I don't vote in the FCS. The stats perform polls. I don't do that anymore. It's a little bit of a time suck, so I don't miss that at all. Yeah, training camp's been interesting. They bring over coaches. Yesterday it was Eric Sanders at DC came over and talked, and he talked a little bit about having those linebackers that are going to play up to 3 spots, depending on the fronts they play. At the last few years under Bobby Houck, we had that on-man front that they liked. And we're going to see more 4-man stuff, but then you'll have a guy like Solomon Tuliapupu who will play outside backer or inside backer in a 3-4 look and then move up to the buck end when they go with 4-down linemen. And they have a couple guys like Justin Eklund from Bowling Green transferred in. He's going to be one of those guys. Clay Oven. Linebackers, and obviously really strong spot. The big questions are up front. How do you get that O-line and D-line going? I think when Bob Stitt left, the O-line was kind of in shambles at the University of Montana. Bobby Houck got it partially fixed, but I don't think they're quite all the way back where he would have liked, or a lot of people would have liked. So now you have now you pretty much have the same team that made it to the semifinals minus. The only people who hit the portal were Bobby Houck and a couple of his assistants, really. Everybody else is back, and then they added 6 guys at the start of training camp, and they got some really good skill players. it's been interesting to see. There's been quite a few plays where they haven't. There's been a couple practices where they haven't had Ayat running 11 on 11, and they bring in the number 2 and 3 quarterbacks. And number 3 right now is Columbia Falls, Cody Schweiker, and he's looked pretty good. So they got some great receivers led by Brooks Davis. Obviously, Eli Gilman's back. He's a preseason player of the year. I also voted Southern Utah number 3 in the media poll for Big Sky, and that's who the Grizz opened with, and they're going to be tough. I think that might be the toughest game they have before the third week in November.
Mark, before we talk Idaho State, I wanted to get maybe your thoughts about Montana this year. And then Mike, if you want to join in, feel free to do so afterwards.
Yeah, I think Montana State and Montana are 1-2 in the conference, and by a fair margin. The one thought I had about Montana State is you look back to their championship game and they went into it, they're playing Illinois State, and it's like, oh, they're going to win this. They should win it. They're going to be the dominant national champion. And as the game played out, they almost lost it. They needed like a block field goal at the end. People were getting ready for them to lose. And so it's funny how the narrative has changed about Montana State. If Illinois State wins that game, then everybody's looking at Montana State going, what happened to them, and why can't the Big Sky win the big one and stuff like that. So it's very interesting. And as far as like who could beat Montana State this year, I guess it's kind of the same thing as just you play the game. They were favored to beat Illinois State, and Illinois State almost beat them, maybe should have beat them, but so that would be the thing is you just get in a game and you lose, and you lose it and you're not the national champ. So, but obviously on paper, they're the best team in the country going in.
Yeah. Anything, Mike, Montana State before I let Mark get to these Idaho teams?
Yeah, I actually kind of liked hearing what Fritz was saying about Adam Jones probably not being a running back that's going to get 20 plus carries a game. Maybe needing a second back there to kind of rotate in and out. And I feel like football in general, game plan wise, is kind of drifting in that way where you have multiple running backs in the room that could come in at any time. And it adds this new wrinkle to what any football team can do on their offense. If the Bobcats can find that guy to contrast Adam Jones in the right way, I could see them only getting stronger. And in a moment where we don't find many weaknesses for them, that's kind of a scary thought.
Yeah, definitely the scary thought. I agree with you, Mike, on that. And I wanted to hit one thing about Montana. This new staff, I'm really interested. I keep saying staff, new head coach, Bobby Kennedy. I'm really interested to see, how the team looks to come out the year, because there's been so much talk, and he's got an extension in the offseason already as well. So I want to see what the hype's all about for Montana, because he seems like he can lead a group of guys. He's been all around the country, coached at Texas and Penn State, and he's been in the Big Ten. And so that experience, I'm interested to see in the Big Sky. Let's jump over here to Mark now. Mark, I got to hear about Idaho, and then after that, we'll get into Fritz's Bengals.
Yeah. Okay. You want to start with Idaho? Okay. I think the key is having a healthy Joshua Wood all season. I think they struggled without him, and even with him, they had inexperienced receivers, and we're kind of, the talent level dropped a little bit and stuff like that. Maybe the coaching, it wasn't an accident that they changed coordinators and stuff like that. And they actually had somebody else calling the plays toward the end of last season. So I think you got a healthy Joshua Wood. You got lots of O linemen back. The receivers who didn't have any experience last year have some now. They went out and got 3 guys with a lot of experience in the portal, so that kind of tells you what they thought of their returning receivers. But like I said, they got a new offensive coordinator and a new defensive coordinator, and they should be better, but a lot of it has to do with keeping Joshua Wood healthy.
For Idaho, it's for me, can they get back to that contender, and being able to be that national team that was recognized in the past. And, I think they have the foundation, like you said, with Joshua Wood. The health comes into a concern as well. And offensive line is going to be a big strength for them. I know they have Henson and Vining back. I was reading up on, and, and they finished top 4 in the sacks last year. So I thought, there is some potential there, and they've got some guys coming back. The question is, can they get back to being that contender that they used to be? Going to jump over now to, let's talk about Fritz's Bengals here. Mark, I'll have you kind of touch on that, and then we can see if anyone else wants to jump in.
Well, it's funny. It's this is Idaho State's prove it year. I mean, usually they're laying in the weeds or below the weeds, maybe, 3 feet underground and stuff like that. In the last couple of years, they've surprised some people. Last year, they were really good and finished strong, beat Idaho and stuff like that. So now we'll see what it's like, for Idaho State when people think they're going to do well. That's a whole different pressure now. Their quarterback Cook is back. Dason Brooks is back. The running back. They lost some pretty good wide receivers, so that will be interesting. I know they brought in a pretty good transfer. So, and I think Cody Hawkins said something about they don't have any linemen back or something. They're really new on that, so that's a big question mark. And that's you don't notice linemen until you notice the linemen aren't blocking and stuff like that. So it'll be an interesting season for Idaho State to, see how they do with the expectations and some of the guys back and some holes to fill on the line.
I'm excited to see Dason Brooks. He's on that preseason Walter Payton watch list. That's one player I'm going to be looking for every single time Idaho State has the ball. That's going to be fun this year. And I believe I saw they have 7 home games this year. So it looks like it's going to be might be the year of Fritz's Bengals. Fritz, what do you think about that? I'll let you chime in.
Well, I agree with Mark. I mean, I think when they hired Cody Hawkins, I had a feeling they were going to get some momentum, the kind of momentum they haven't had since Larry Lewis was there. And there's a year in there where the Bengals were 8-3 or 8-4 and didn't make the playoffs, and I thought they should have. And but it was one of those years where the Big Sky wasn't good, and you only took 16 teams to the playoffs, not like now. I'm glad Cook is back. I know Brooks is really good. They got a couple quarterbacks whose names I can't spell, much less pronounce. So I'm hoping Cook doesn't get hurt. And I noticed they've had some injuries on the outside in the receiver group. So I think there's a guy named Elijah Beeman who could wind up being a really a plus player for him when Jordan Cook gets out and throws the ball.
Jon, I feel like I want to ask you, make sure, you're still involved here. That's my fault. What is your opinion, maybe if you had one, on the Idaho versus Idaho State? I know we're leaning a little bit Idaho State, but I wanted to hear from you as well.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that has kind of come to my head when hearing these two talk about how Idaho State's going to be this year is it just makes me feel kind of like how Northern Arizona was supposed to be last year. They seemed like they were ready to take that next step, and things just didn't come together to go as far as they wanted to. So I'm wondering if Idaho State is going to be able to, take advantage of all this talent that they do have, maybe take that next step and, put themselves firmly into the playoffs and not just on a, needing to win the last week to get into the playoff situation.
I think that's a perfect comparison. That's a great Northern Arizona last year. I mean, that was what we were calling your team last year. Was Jon's team was Northern Arizona, and they had the players. We'll talk about them here soon, but can they put it all together and let the egos aside when there are multiple players on the team to come together as one? So that'll be interesting to watch as well. Let's go over to Mike here. Mike, you're our Eastern Washington guy. I know you've got integrated and finally, I think, you were able to have a couple interviews at Big Sky Media Day, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I got to talk to Coach Best, who made me really quickly, figured me out really fast, I was new to this pretty quickly. He's like, as soon as I sat down, he's like, "This is your first year, huh?" So he was giving me a hard time as soon as I met him, but it was a great interview. Talked a lot about the upcoming season. He feels very optimistic about what this team could have to offer. He talked about some of the coaching changes that he made, including hiring Mike Perez as a new strength and conditioning coach, has brought a lot of improvement in terms of team speed, strength, and overall preparation. And, you hear coaches talk a lot about, how important the little details are. Wouldn't be surprised if we see some of this play out when they hit the gridiron this fall. They also bring back a lot of experienced players, 2 of which have been recognized in a few preseason All-American publications throughout the summer, Isaiah Perez and Jalen Jenkins, who I I identified as a breakout defensive player last year, and wouldn't be surprised if he took another step this upcoming season. And then returning from injury is Malik Dotson, who before last season put over 500 yards rushing on the ground. I mean, that's a big loss. He played 2 games, and was out the rest of the year with a foot injury. He's eager to be back. Feels like that running back room has a lot of experience and explosiveness that could really help out Nate Bell, who is likely to be back as a starting quarterback, and provides a dual threat element to the Eagles offense, which throughout the year was very, very productive. Found themselves in a lot of close games when they lost. So that kind of falls into, some of the key additions in the offseason. A lot of defensive transfers brought in. Best mostly kind of credit it to, that's just where they lost more players. But, I asked him sort of, these close losses to, Montana, that they almost upset them last season on the road, I believe. And he kind of was just like, they don't really matter if we can't figure out how to close games. So I'm sure that's a key point of emphasis as they get ready for the upcoming season. And they're going to have a chance to really start off strong in the Big Sky like they did last year, 3-1, when they faced Northern Arizona in week 1. So this team might be kind of a sleeper this year. I wouldn't. I'm anxious to see how it kind of shows up on the field, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're making some noise this year and they take at least a step.
If they do take that step, Mike, last question I'll ask here, then we'll get to the rest of the teams. If they do take that step, back to how they used to look, Eastern Washington used to be a wagon of a program, win national championships. But where do you see that step coming from if it's to be there, if that makes sense?
Like in terms of play on the field?
Yeah, like where we obviously we know where they stand. They need to stay healthy. They need to make sure that they buy together, like you said. But where could you see that take an upgrade, and where would it come from?
Well, I think a definitely place where it needs to take an upgrade is on the defensive side of the ball. They gave up a lot of yards per game, which I think kind of played a key factor in a lot of their losses because the offense was doing a lot there. And then on the flip side, I think if this team really takes a step, it'll be really because the offensive line takes a step. I mean, last year, Best talked a lot about, if the pocket collapses, it forced Nate Bell to feel like he has to run more often than he should. If they could get him to feel more comfortable to just stay in the pocket and throw more often, that offense could take another step that we haven't even seen yet. So, yeah, I think the offensive line and the trenches in general will make a big difference if they can.
Spot on, Mike. And Coach Best, I know he's got the mantra behind him and the staff for that. So we'll see if they can return to those glory days over there for the Eagles. I'm going to jump really quick and talk about 2 of the other big teams in the Big Sky, and then maybe add a little bit on some other teams. But we really have dove into the main teams we cover. I want to talk about UC Davis really quick. They are the biggest, I would say, threat to Montana State at the top of the Big Sky. They're ranked 6th nationally. They lost last year to Montana State, 38-17 in the quarterfinals. But there's some big names to go for UC Davis this year. They have a preseason first-team All-American, Samuel Batu Jr. receiver. He's going to be one of the best receivers to watch every Saturday in the FCS. So if anyone's out there trying to find a speedy receiver, that's one. Running back Jordan Fisher is going to be on the preseason All Big Sky selection team. So he's another offensive name to look out for. And tight end Winston Williams also on the Big Sky team. The biggest question mark for UC Davis this year is where's the quarterback? They had a freshman phenom, Caden Pinnock, last year, was amazing, really was a lot of the offense. And there was a lot of injuries last year for the Aggies. But Caden Pinnock has now transferred to Washington State. So the big question mark is, who's going to play quarterback on a team with some loaded positions? The last information I have about that is they have 3 different guys taking snaps in their first scrimmage. We have Traynor Cleland, Jackson Kolek, and Alex Eason. So to be determined on the quarterback for UC Davis. But jumping to the defensive side, we have the Connors brothers back. Both were hurt last year. Elite defensive backs in the FCS. I think it's going to be fun to see them have a healthy season along with some big offensive names. And overall, I think they are just trying to make sure they steady pace as well, kind of like Montana State. Take care of business each week, see where they end up in the winter. And the last team I really want to dive deep into really quick here is Northern Arizona. John, I'm going to take Northern Arizona as the team I'm rooting for this year. I was able to actually meet with their coach and talk to Ty Pennington at Big Sky Media Day. I was impressed. I was going over there. I was a little shy. It was my first Big Sky Media Day, and they sat me down and were super nice and gave me a full interview, all of their attention. So I figured, why don't I pay the respect back this year and take it from John and do the Northern Arizona. But in the big picture, they're, like we were saying earlier, they were projected last year to maybe be that dark horse team that makes a lot of noise. They didn't. They missed the playoffs, and they enter this year, though, as number 25 in the rankings. Like I said, Ty Pennington's going to be the leader. He was invited to the Manning Passing Academy. I thought that was cool. It's not something you see a ton of at the FCS level. So he's got some people looking at him for NFL, and just a veteran quarterback. He'll lead the team. And also someone I wanted to bring up was a tight end, Jeter Purdy, 415 yards, 30 catches last year. Preseason All Big Sky. He was a freshman All-American in 2025. And the last name I have is Shoes Brinkley. It's going to be a safety for the Lumberjacks. First of all, it's a great name. Had to, of course, say that. Transfer from McNeese and led McNeese in tackles and also had 3 double-digit tackle games. So he's going to be all over the place for the Lumberjacks. I'm buying NAU because I don't think they wanted to be exactly where they were last year. So there's some motivation to be better. And having a quarterback at the helm, unlike UC Davis, is going to make me more confident in the team. I'm going to jump it back to Fritz here. Actually, Fritz, we have 2 new teams in the Big Sky this year, Utah Tech, Southern Utah. What's your history with those schools, and if you had maybe anything on those?
Well, Utah Tech has just kind of been cannon fodder as a non-conference foe for a lot of Big Sky schools. Now they're in the Big Sky, and I picked them pretty low. I picked them 13th out of 13 teams. Southern Utah, on the other hand, used to be in the Big Sky, and they were a handful under Coach Lamb, who's now at Northern Colorado. They beat the Grizz in Washington Grizzlies Stadium. And last year they had a running back named Joshua Dye who scored 28 touchdowns, and he graduated, which I'm glad. I think the Grizz are probably glad for it. But
yeah,
they got a couple guys that came in as transfers. A guy named Cameron Reed out of Western Carolina, and a guy named Floyd Chalk out of San Jose State. And I imagine their MO is going to be the same. They're going to run the ball through the A and B gap and make you stop them. And yeah, we'll see how far of a step down there is from Joshua Dye. There's got to be some, but I think this is going to be a handful. And like I said before, I picked them 3rd in the Big Sky. They're going to be good.
Yeah, I was reading they might have a couple of running back system, like you're saying, and being able to replace that isn't going to be the easiest for production. But, there is some athleticism on the offensive ball. And then I was looking at the roster. Their secondary also has some sneaky players coming in. Lando Brown left last year for them, so I think that'll be a hole to fill. But I think it's interesting, Fritz, that you put them 3rd, and I'm excited to see maybe they'll support that for you. For Utah Tech, yeah, it's not going to be. It's going to be a season of establishing themselves in the Big Sky. It's their first year. Didn't have a ton of accolades or anyone. Besides, I got to give a shout out because special teams matter. They have a legit punter, Ryan Marks, averaged 46.5 per punt last year. So I wanted to make sure I added something for Utah Tech. But yeah, they're going to be building slowly, and I'm excited to see willing they stay in the Big Sky if years to come they start improving. Next team I wanted to hit on really quick is Cal Poly. Way I'm identifying this year is they have great linebackers. We have Mikey Diamato, first team All Big Sky, first team All American in the preseason, and Kenny Olson, both combined for 254 tackles last year. So that Cal Poly defense will be fun to watch. And they open against Idaho. I think that's one of the games that'll actually be pretty interesting to start. Idaho needs to establish a win, as we were talking about with Mark. Cal Poly also, are they going to be able to make their name for themselves when we talk about it next week? John, I wanted to ask you, there's 2 new coaches in the Big Sky, and I'm not saying you have to, precisely know who and where, but, coming to this conference, and Weber State is whole resetting their roster, and Eric Charr is the new coach, won 7 high school state championships in Utah. What does that say to you, Jon? I just want to hear what you think about that.
No, actually, I was Weber State was one of the teams that I had a fair bit of interest in when looking over it this year because, like you mentioned, I think it's like 75 new players on their roster this year, and just how the coaching staff is going to look. You were talking earlier about Bobby Kennedy coming into Montana and all the experience he brings from FBS level and Power 5 schools, and then you look at Weber State this year in Char, and he's got high school experience. This is his first college job, so he's definitely made a name for himself at Corner Canyon and Draper these past few years. Like you mentioned, 7 state championships. I'll be interested to see how that kind of works itself out with Weber State. I'm also interested to see how Devin Brown's going to play at quarterback. I don't know if any of you are too familiar with him, but he was at Ohio State for a couple of years. I believe he lost out to Will Howard for the starting job. Then he spent a year at Cal. Now he comes back. He played for Jar at Corner Canyon in 2022. Won a state championship there, I believe, together. So there's that familiarity between coach and quarterback there. Also, just a little fun note, non-traditional quarterback number. Where's listed as number 33 on the Weber State roster. So that'll be an interesting one, not the typical 1 to 19.
I'm going to go to Mike here if he's got anything to say, and then we've pretty much hit up on all the teams. I didn't get to Portland State. I think that'll be a fun conversation for next week, but we are running some thin on time. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll try to make it quick. I kind of just going to be echoing a lot of what Jon just said about Devin Brown. Ohio native, so I am kind of familiar with Devin Brown. But I mean, in his coming out of high school, number 5 quarterback in the nation, 4-star recruit. I think for a first-time head coach at the college level, I think he's got the right quarterback to kind of help him get into the flow of things and transition a lot of these new transfers in and a lot of these new players in. He might be a sleeper as a player in the Big Sky Conference. I would not be surprised if Devin Brown, gives Weber State a new reputation this fall.
Yeah, and we'll see if that high school glory can carry over for Coach Char. I'm excited to actually watch him this year. Last year when Weber was on, I can't tell you that I was, I always try to tune in every game, but when Weber last year, it felt like there was something missing and the team wasn't bought in when you'd watch personally. Fritz, Mark, do you guys have anything else about the teams before we go over to picks?
No, I was going to weigh in on Eastern a little bit, kind of piggybacking on what Mike said. I think it would be kind of cool if all 5 of our quote unquote area teams are in contention for the conference title and or playoff berth, the 2 Montanas, the 2 Idahos, and Eastern. I think Eastern has gotten better at defense since a couple of years ago. I know maybe they weren't as good as they wanted to be last year, but that was still better than the year before. I think the other question mark with them is that there's their quarterback. I mean, they have Nate Bell, who's a runner who passes, and then they have their other guy, that Jake Skockel, however you pronounce it, that he's a passer through, the Grizz fans know what he did to them and stuff like that. So I'm curious to see how they sort that out. It's not like Bell's going to be the quarterback, but it seems like when they've had running quarterbacks the last couple of years that weren't named Eric Barrier, they weren't quite as effective. I mean, so we'll see if maybe, Bell can passes a little more than he runs, then maybe he'll work out. But if he just kind of becomes a runner, then, maybe they need to go to Jake.
The history of Montana versus Eastern Washington quarterbacks is a fun one, and for some fans not. But we can get that to another episode on that. Let's get to our preseason picks, guys. We love our pick segment. We're here for it. I got to let Jon start this year. Jon's the winner. Once we start getting the weekly picks and some more, stay tuned on that. We'll start going in order from leader. But as of now, Jon's our champ. Jon, let's hear your offensive, defensive MVP and your Big Sky champion.
Yeah, well, I wanted to be a little different than the picks that came in Spokane a couple of weeks ago. I think for the champion, that one I'll just get out of the way. I'm not going to go against Montana State. Until proven otherwise, I will believe that Montana State is going to win this championship and has a good chance of repeating as national champions. I did stay in the same teams for offensive and defensive MVP. With the offensive MVP, though, I'm going with Kealy Ayat. I think he's going to take another step forward this year for Montana and just kind of get that offense rolling. Having a receivers coach that's become his head coach now, that kind of helps out with that position group as well. So I think Ayat's going to step forward. As for defensive MVP, I think Caden Dowler, of course, is the obvious choice. I'm going to go with Zach Cruz. I think he's going to step up on the defensive side for the Bobcats, get some good pressure in off the edge, and he's going to show out.
Love it, John. Let's go right on over to Fritz. Fritz, what you got?
Well, I think, yeah, you have to go with the Bobcats to win the conference championship again. My offensive MVP, I think I need to go with Justin Lamson, only because, he matched up with the all Big Sky first team quarterback, Kealy Ayat, twice and outplayed him both times. So I think it's Lamson for my offensive MVP. And Ayat could certainly prove me wrong in late November. Defensive MVP, I'm going to go with Peyton Wing. I was quizzing him yesterday about having to learn another defensive look. 2 in 2 years. He pointed out this will be his 5th in 5 years because he had 3 DCs at Portland State before he transferred over. So, but he's a preseason pick for first team All Big Sky. He's a good player, rangy, and he's my pick for defensive MVP.
Mike, we'll go over to you next.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of piggyback off Fritz a little bit. I got Justin Lamson taking offensive MVP as well, just coming back with an experienced roster. And, typically when a team does really well, these kind of awards will favor a quarterback too, just in past experience. But I think he's going to excel in his role with the team. And then on the defensive side, I'm going to go with a little bit of a hot take here. If Eastern can take a step, I wouldn't be surprised to see Jalen Jenkins in there. I have to think if they did better last year, would he have been held in a higher regard than he already was? Had a really big breakout year and is poised to take it even further this year. So dark horse pick there. But and then I got Montana State repeating as Big Sky champs.
That'll be something we track all this season, Mike. Glad you definitely had that thought. We'll pay attention to it. Mark, we'll go on over to you.
Okay, I went a little different direction with offensive MVP. I picked Joshua Wood from Idaho, and the reason being is because I think for Idaho to be really good, he's going to have to make a lot of plays, either with his arm or with his legs, and so he might have more to do with them offensively. Nothing against Lamson and Ayat; they're obviously really good, but they also have other weapons. They have running backs to hand it to and good receivers to throw to. So all those really talented people on Montana State might cancel each other out a little bit. So it might come down to how people vote for that award, whether they just, pick the quarterback on the best team and go from there. But I think Joshua Wood, if Idaho has a good year, it's probably going to be because of what he did with his arms and his feet. Defensive MVP, I don't think he expected to be back this year, but because of injury, Rex Connors is back. I think he was the preseason defensive player of the year last year. Mm-hmm. And I think the way they play, he comes up on the line of scrimmage a lot and he makes a lot of plays. Hopefully they don't try to hand him the ball this year. So, and then my Big Sky champion is Utah. No, it's not Utah Tech. It's Montana State. Just see if you guys are listening.
Oh, well, I'm already going to let you know I picked Montana State as well. Once we can all see the evidence in front of us that they're not the best team, then that's a different conversation for a different day. As we know, though, they're picked one for the reason in the Big Sky. The offensive MVP, I really, really did think about this. I didn't want to go with my pick just because of where I went to college. I went to Montana, obviously, if you guys didn't know that. But I wanted to go Deshaun Brooks, was really close to picking him. But the fact that Eli Gilman's got all these records he's chasing this year. And I know I talked to him at Big Sky Media Day. That's not why he's playing, but it's obtainable for him to go down as the best running back in Grizz history. And this is it for him. This is his last year to do it. I think Eli's going to have a terrific season. And just very, very thrilled to see if he can come down in the record books for Montana. And then I thought I was going to be the only one that brought up Rex Connors, but Mark got it before I did. I'm going with Rex Connors. He's going to be healthy this year. I definitely know that him and his brother have some vengeance for the Big Sky not being able to play in those playoffs last year. So very excited to see. There's a couple different brothers we have. We have the Connors brothers and the Dowler brothers. So excited to see how those guys pair out. But I'm going with Rex Connors. We've went longer than I would have thought today, so I'm going to wrap it up now. I want to appreciate my panel for being here on time, always having the best information, and always giving me a smile. They're great guys. So thank you to you guys for being here today. We will be back next week to preview week 1 of Big Sky Conference football, and it's actually Big Sky Conference football. It's not just any random game, so please tune in for that. Please like, subscribe, share the video with your friends, leave a comment below. Give us your picks as well. We'd love to read and engage with you guys that are watching this video. But that'll be all the time we have on this episode of Big Sky Now. Big thank you to M&C Tires for sponsoring this podcast, and we will catch you guys next time.
M&C Tire in Kalispell has been locally owned since 1979. From urban avenues to untamed trails, M&C Tire will help you conquer any terrain. Unleash the power within your ride. Stop into M&C Tire at 1271 North Meridian Road in Kalispell or mnctire.com. M&C Tire, wherever you go, we've got you covered.